Now, also consider a world in which only work that matters most gets done. One in which there's a ruthless prioritization and focus. That focus and prioritization determines what we will do and when we will do it. Okay? And much more, one in which the customer or the stakeholder or whoever it is, the user, is brought into whatever you're developing, whether it's the onboarding, a new onboarding program, or it's a new performance management system. You bring at the beginning when you're conceptualizing in a way that allows you to go back and forth in an iterative manner and allows you to adapt what the user requirements would be so that you're ending up with what is the most ideal thing for the customer. This is the world of Agile. This is what Agile is about. And Agile, what Agile does is, if you consider, people will say, the natural question would be, what is Agile? So let's start from that. Agile is really a way of working. It is a set of practices that allows teams, organizations, to use either similar resources or less to achieve even more results. So in Coca-Cola Hellenic, where I work, our value statement for Agile is that Agile will give us 2 times the results for half the resources. Fantastic, right? And Agile does this really, as you would have found maybe looking at materials, resources, or even based on your own experience. It does this by taking very large, complex problems and breaks it into models, small models that are adaptive and they work in an incremental way. And it relies on 4 principles, largely, which is why it's a way of working. The 4 principles I will start with, I will share. The first one is that Agile, the Agile principle of people over process. People over process, when you consider that, the Agile way of working is one in which there's a high level of interaction. There are a number of elements that are very important. It's less about rules, it's less about policies, it's more about empowering the teams, it's more about leaders breaking down the barriers and getting out of the way so that the team can arrange their work, self-manage themselves, and get things done in a very highly collaborative manner that allows a lot of back and forth. So people over processes is the first principle, one of the core principles in Agile. The other thing about Agile also is prototyping. So prototyping over perfection. And prototyping is not necessarily your models. A prototype can be a simple thing that you have drawn on a piece of paper and you're testing the idea as early as possible. There are a number of concepts that come to mind when you think about prototyping in Agile. You will often hear things like progress in progress, which is actually what you will find in an Apple store. Progress in progress, not a work in progress, because it's iterative. Every time you're looking at building on it as well. And then it takes us to the third principle, which is customer focus. So with Agile, if you're prototyping, you're testing. You're going back, you're testing, you're taking feedback, then you're moving to the next task or whatever it is you define in order to get the results you need. So customer focus, customer feedback is at the heart of Agile. You really have to embrace that in order for an Agile way of working to be functional. The fourth core principle around Agile is really something somebody said earlier, which is flexibility and adaptive plans over over fixed ones. As you would expect, the concept of minimum viable product means that you want to come with what is the minimum that, as the word goes, is viable. In that instance, you do have to take a very flexible and adaptive position in order to arrive at that, working on the feedback. those are 4 principles around Agile. Now, if I want to take it forward, we understand in a nutshell what Agile is. What about what Agile is not? Agile is not a project management methodology. Most people might mistake Agile for that. Agile is more than a project management methodology. Agile is not speed. Agile is more than speed, as you will find. So Agile is more than speed. And Agile is not a process. And when you're talking about Agile, I go back to what I said around prioritization and focus. These are 2 things that are very central to the concept of Agile. Let us look at, to bring this home, I will give you, I'll share with you an illustration, and then let's have a simple exercise that talks about the importance of focus and context loss, and I'll explain what that is. So I'm going to bring out my phone, and I'm going to send you back to first school. I'm going to ask you to clap, and I'm going to ask you to count as you do so. But hold on, because I'm going to time you. Okay. And I'm going to ask you to make a note of how many claps you counted in the period. So just 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to just put it at 10 seconds, and I'm going to ask you to do that. Never mind that it's a simple exercise, but we'll get to why we're doing this. So I'm going to ask you to start now. You have 10 seconds. Please count your claps. Okay, make a note of your clap. Okay. I'm also going to ask you 3 questions. They're very simple questions, and I want to have a note of how long it's going to take us. So my first question is, who is hosting us today? Okay. Who is the governor of the central bank? And which is the capital of Ghana? Okay. So we spent about 11 seconds doing that, and previously we had 10. So I'm going to put together 22 seconds, okay? And in 22 seconds, the question I'm going to ask is, I'm going to ask you to please clap again, and while you're clapping, I'm going to ask those questions, and you have to answer me. And then just make a note of how many claps you're able to do in that 22 seconds. Can we do that for me? Thank you. So start now. Okay. Which company is hosting us? Who is the governor of Central Bank? Who is the current Prime Minister of Britain? Okay. Actually, I ended up at about 27 seconds. But the key thing there is that you will observe that every time you answer a question, ideally you will have to stop. And then you have to think about where you return. That's context loss. Context loss results in you lose time in context loss. Actually, research shows that you lose up to 30% of work that can be done to context loss when you're working on 2 to 3 projects, and it can go as high as 75%. So let's park that. Prioritization, multitasking is not as good as we've always thought it is. Now, I will come back again. I'll give you another illustration, okay, on why ruthless prioritization, why Agile is able to deliver the benefits using prioritization. So consider that we've got 3 projects, A, B, and C. Project A will give us 200 Naira after 12 months. It will take us 12 months. All 3 projects will take us 12 months to complete. Project A will give us 200 Naira. Project B will give us 150. And Project C will give us 100 Naira. Okay? So now we have that. And we've got 6 people, good project specialists to work on this. Now we have an option of putting all 6, allocating them 2 to each project, so that after 12 months, we know that we've completed the project and we can start earning the benefits from the beginning of the second year, right? But with Agile we say the approach to Agile will require that you put, let's also assume, let me have that assumption that you can scale the project based on time. Okay, meaning that by adding more people, you can finish the project faster. So let's say you rather than do that, the Agile way will request that you approach this, put in all 6 on the project. You put all 6 on the project, you finish in 4 months. Okay, meaning that you have 8 months in the first year to end, which comes up to about 133 naira. Okay, then the second project, you start from month 5, right? And you end in month 8, if I'm correct. Yes, in month 8, meaning that you have 4 months to end, right? You have 4 months to end how much? About 50 naira. Okay, because it's 1/3. And then the last project you do for the last 4 months, but you won't earn anything, right? But you've earned 183 naira in the first year just by prioritizing properly, and then the following year you can earn everything. This is actually how Agile delivers. That is how Agile delivers. That's why prioritization is very critical to Agile as well. Now, a bit of some work that was done on multitasking and the benefits that we used to think of. Actually, multitasking by research has proven that with multitasking, you actually do kill your brain cells. Okay, it kills your creativity. It makes you lose empathy. What else? You know? So, multitasking isn't as valuable as we've always thought it does. And in an agile environment, multitasking doesn't work. Now, let's bring it home to HR. Agile has been changing a lot of things that we do in HR. If you look at some of the key processes or areas we've been handling, there's been a lot of work around Agile. So let's start, for example, with performance management. Agile is changing the face of performance management. And you will often hear about moving away from annual reviews to periodic reviews. This is actually adopting an Agile way, because what it does is that with your line manager as the one providing the feedback, you are able to course correct as early as possible in the course of the performance cycle and get things done properly. So Agile is being applied to performance management. Agile is also being seen to modify compensation schemes that we see today with more emphasis around teams, because in Agile, you push the agenda for teams ahead of individuals. Agile is also affecting how we deploy coaching and the importance of it, because the line manager in the traditional form's job is changing to coaching and supporting. So this is some of the areas Agile is impacting HR. Now, what about the structure? You know, what has also we have seen is that with Agile, in terms of structure, HR is the organizational setup is changing. And one example is one in which you still keep your COE model and you keep your HRBPs, and then you've got a pool, okay, that just sits, floating, that allows you to allocate to the biggest priorities you have. What I think that with Agile, as it becomes deeper and deeper in the organizations, is you probably find a time where we would not need to use HRBP commercial or HRBP supply chain. It would just be HRBP, because you don't know who you'll be supporting exactly tomorrow based on that. The other thing that I've seen with Agile and HR structures is that, like in our own case, is the establishment of what is referred to as an Agile COA, Center of Excellence, where you've got a group of Agile coaches that are deployed across the organization to support an Agile transformation. I think one other thing that is so important about Agile that if you don't take at all, that at least you should remember, is the thing about the mindset when it comes to Agile. I think with Agile for me, I was thinking about this is, the concept of employee experience. If you really want to deliver that, you need to have an Agile mindset. Because with a mindset, or Agile mindset, you're constantly, every time you need to make a change to anything, you want to bring the users in as early as possible, take their feedback, So with Agile, HR people have to be more open-minded, receptive to feedback, okay? Stop the arrogance of we finished this, you guys take, and that's it. We'll see you next year when we need to do the next review. So that's very important when it comes to the HR structure. Now, one thing that you probably find also is that as time goes on and on, like we are experiencing in our own case in CCH, is that the businesses are going to demand that you support them with agile transformations, right? So with the agile transformations, that's a whole lot topic on its own. But there are a number of things that you need to remember. You need to remember the importance of leadership. Actually, research also shows that most agile transformations fail due to lack of leadership support and culture. There's also the element of the structure. There's also the element of capability, because you need to help line managers live through the changes that's going to happen. But let's summarize it this way, that with Agile, you need to help yourself when it comes to Agile transformation. And helping yourselves means you need to be familiar with the concept. You need to look at materials that are available. You need to also try as much as possible to make yourself as diverse in terms of skill set and understanding your business as much as possible in order to be able to play within an agile environment. The other thing is that you have to then see how you will help your managers, or your leaders. I like to use the word leaders and not managers. You have to see how to help them. How do you help them to move into this mindset in which they are coaching and not judging? Okay? How do you help them to accept that they have to delegate with the right level of empowerment? How do you help them to accept that their job is to look for where the barriers are, confronting the team, break it down, and get out of the way so that the team can continue with the work that needs to be done? It's going to take a whole new way. How do you help them to embrace feedback, as well, as much as possible? Then, helping your organization. Well, I think the most important thing with Agile when it comes to the organization is it doesn't matter if Mr. A will be working on an Agile project or B. It's important that the entire organization, the basics, everybody's exposed to the basics. It's important to start promoting practices and behaviors that support team building and teamwork as against individual work. Okay? It's also important to have a customer-centric organization, one in which every time they want to make a move, they want to take a step, they're considering who is the customer, how do I check what works with the customer, and incorporate that in what they are doing. So those are some of the things, to help yourself, to help your leaders, and help the organization. Let me talk a bit about our own experience in CCH, and then I will round up. So in CCH, one of the things, we started our journey last year, Q4, and we started with engaging all the leaders, putting all the senior leaders, we refer to them as the top 300 leaders, putting them through a program in which they are meant to make them familiar with Agile. We've also gone on to create an Agile Center of Excellence. And our vision is, as we move on, is apart from taking certain key areas of the business and making them agile, but we believe that it's with our evolution plan, certain functions will go fully agile. Certain business units will go fully agile. The entire organization is unlikely to go agile. But the most important thing is that as you go through your own journey, as you become more familiar with the subject of agile, is that remember that if you can't apply it to anything, at least you can apply it to your mindset, and you can bring it to bear on the work you do. The value statement is very strong when it comes to agile. Get more using same or less resources. I want to wish you all the best as you get on your own journey. Thank you.